So welcome to the next winter webinar for ALD advisors, documenting ALD's impact, the retention research project revisited. So I thought I would give you a brief overview of what we've done in the past and where we hope to go in the future. So about 2 years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago, so maybe before some of you were even advising, and then if you were advisors 2 or 3 years ago, you may recall this. I think from the registrations, I can see that none of your institutions, save for maybe one, I think Emily, yours, Greensboro expressed interest, but I don't think was able to get the data. But anyway, we launched this project and I did collect some data, and it was looking pretty good for ALD in terms of our impact. And so I thought I'd walk you through what we did, what we communicated to advisors, what we collected so far, and what I'm hoping to do going forward that you're hopefully able to participate in. And this, what I'm going to be very specific in terms of the data that we'll need, and you need to determine whether it's doable for you and for your institution, whether you have your own access to this data, or more often than not, you need to access it from the registrar or student records office. So I'm going to screen share a little bit and just show you nothing too fancy, not a PowerPoint or anything, but rather just some emails emails and Excel documents that I have used. And let me see what you see. Do you see a Word document here? Okay. So first and foremost, let me just share. I'm not going to read this entire email to you, but this is a similar type of email that I would send to all of you and really all advisors to see who's interested in participating. And essentially, this is how it all started. I'm inviting chapter advisors to participate in this research project. At the time, 2 years ago or 3 years ago, I was collaborating with a local institution, a SUNY, State University of New York at Buffalo State. A faculty member there and a student intern, a grad student, was helping with the project. I would look to do that again, maybe not Buffalo State, but another university. I don't know if we really need that. But they were helping out. So we thought this would be a really useful project, because what we want to do is measure the impact that ALD has on a student. And in particular, there were 3 different measures that we're looking at. And so the first one is retention. So the first piece of data, and the most important one, and the one that we really focused on, was retention. And so what we're getting at is, what is the impact of ALD membership on retention? So for a first-year student who joins in their 2nd semester, so this only applies, this retention piece only applies to chapters who invite students in the spring. If you wait a full year and invite in the fall only, which some chapters do, retention is not a factor, because as we know, retention is 1st to 2nd year. So it's a really great piece of information we can have for those who invite in the spring. So the idea here is, let's say you invite 100 students to join Alpha Lambda Delta in the spring semester every year. Of those 100 invited, so keep in mind, all those 100 are academically successful. They have a 3.5 or higher GPA. So of those 100, let's say 50 joined and 50 did not join. What we're looking at is a data point of those 50 who joined, how many returned in the fall semester that same year. So their sophomore year, how many returned to your institution as sophomores? Of the 50 who didn't join, how many of them returned? And what we're looking for is the number higher for ALD? So of the 50 who joined ALD, were they more likely to return in the fall than the ones who were invited to join but didn't. And so this is about retaining high achieving first year students. That's the first piece. The second piece looks at graduation rates. That's was a little bit harder for us to gather. It means looking back much further in your records. And I'll get to some dates and timelines and specifics, but for graduation rates, as you may know, probably know, graduation rates for colleges and universities are measured usually by 6 years. They are measured by 4 years as well, but the 4-year number, I don't know how it is for your institution, but nationally, the average 4-year graduation rate is pretty low. And so most of the measures you see are a 6-year rate, because we know that students stop in and out or take longer, change their major, add another year, add a semester, add 2 years. So the most common graduation rate is a 6-year rate. So that means if you wanted to look at that for your ALD chapter in your history, you'd have to go back a number of years. The third thing, if I'm still on this Word document here, the third piece is, at least we did this 2 years ago, is we added a qualitative piece of this research project. And we took a sampling, or got a sampling of volunteer members to answer a number of questions about the impact in terms of their sense of belonging to the campus, their leadership skill development if they took on a leadership role or an officer role. And that's primarily what the grad student intern focused on. He collected all the data and he wrote up a nice report on that. Not sure, maybe based on some feedback from you, if that would be of interest to continue that piece. But let's focus more on the quantitative data right now, what we're looking at. And so we're going to focus on retention and graduation rates. But that's essentially it in a nutshell, is what we did. I'm going to show you what I collected and how I collected it. And again, keep in mind, if this is something that you think is doable for your institution, if you can participate in this, that would be great. And that's what we're looking for, is to keep adding to the data and then start to do something a little bit more with it. We do talk about it, but I would like a little bit more data to go with, and to be able to add to it, and to see if the information I initially got continues. So, okay, and again, so I'm going to talk about let me just look at the timeline. So this would be the new timeline we'd be looking at. And again, I'll share all this in an email. But this is the first thing, is if you have this data, this is what I'd be looking for to collect, is first year students. So that means you're freshmen that started at your institution in 2018, in the fall of 2018. They were invited to join this past spring, a year ago, spring 2019. How many returned the second year to their second year in the fall of 2019? And then you're going to look at the ones who were invited and didn't join. And we're going to try and go as far back as 4 years if you have it. If you don't worry about it, or if that's just not, if you want to maybe start right now and going forward, try and build this into what you might collect going forward, that would be fine too. But at least if you could look at this past year. The graduation rates, as I mentioned, this is 2 years worth, two sort of cohorts worth. So those who joined in the spring of 2014, how many graduated in 2017, and how many graduated in May of 2019. That would be the most recent data you'd be even able to get, if you even can go back that far. So that's why it's a little bit more challenging, especially if you're a new advisor right now. Then you may not have that handy. But let me take you to the next step, which is what I did collect last year, or 2 years ago, last time we did this, and what I can provide to you to help make this happen. Okay, so step one, let's see. I have this all organized here. show you stuff. So I'm giving you a few real examples from actual chapters. So what I did, and doesn't look like much here, so let me explain what I did. Let's say your institution, Carly, I'm going to pick on you. So St. Anselm wants to participate in this. You're a brand new advisor. You might not, you're not, but you might pretend you are. You might not have any past data. You don't know who was invited and who joined, that sort of thing. Most of it is in MHS if you're using MHS. But what I can do if you want to participate, and this is what I did for the ones that did collect data, is I can just send you membership lists, and I'll label them as these are all the students that were invited to join in the spring of 2019, 2018, 2017, 2016. I can just send that to you for 4 separate documents, let's say. And then it would be on you to work then with your registrar and just create columns from that document to say, I can give you the list of who was invited and who joined. And then all I would need is your registrar to say, okay, of these ones that joined, here's how many were enrolled in courses in the fall of the next fall. And of those who didn't, here's how many were enrolled. So that's the ask, is for you to provide those 2 more columns once I give you the columns of who was invited and who joined. So here's an example. I actually don't have the actual lists I sent to show you, but it's a list of that I sent Cumberland, for example. So this is the example. Is this viewable? Can everybody see this? Should I make it bigger? Okay, so I sent the Cumberland University they were manual, that's why I don't have it. The list of the students who were eligible, meaning that were invited. 70 students were invited and 34 accepted. He had the list of those names of who they were. He returned to me this document to say that 34 who were invited and joined returned, so that's 100% retention. And of the 36 who didn't join, they all did return. So there's not a great example of a difference in ALD, but you'll see that there is a difference in other years. So here's the next year. Of the 46 invited, 26 accepted, 24 returned. Of the 46 invited, 20 who didn't accept, only 15 returned. So is that making sense? So I won't go through all the columns, but that's essentially what the first step is, me giving you the lists of those who were invited and those who joined, you collecting who returned the following fall, and then sending that to me. And I'll do the math, or you can send me the raw data, you could send me just the raw numbers, you could send me the percentages, whatever works for you, whatever's easiest for you. So that was the first piece of data collected. This is one institution example.
Eileen, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Just in terms of parameters, so are you looking, and you may not even want me to include this group, but we do an invite at the end of the freshman year as well. So I can be looking at giving you those who were just invited in the fall versus who's in that class. Am I making that clear? So like my class of 2022, I'm going to have probably 16 sophomores inducted this spring with all the freshmen who were invited in the fall. So I can leave them, so it's like, do you want me to do it by inductee class or by classification of that cohort entering? Or do you just want me to get rid of the spring group?
Right. For the purposes of retention, it should just be that first group you mentioned, not the ones.
Okay.
You're not considering those that joined after reaching a 3.5 after their first full year.
Okay.
Those are not, they should not be part of the group, because the idea is to get at the impact on retention from first to second year. And those students, if you didn't invite them till the fall, right, based on their full year grades.
I invite them at the end of their first year to join, because I only do an induction in the spring.
Okay.
So it's still first to second year retention.
Yes.
But
Okay.
they get a second invite if they meet the.
Okay, then yes, I would say yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a little gray because.
Well, think about it and let me know.
Yeah, because the idea is they joined in. Well, some don't join until the end of April anyway, so I would say it's fine to include them.
Okay.
Yeah, it's up to you, however you sort of want to look at retention for your chapter, but that does fit the criteria. Okay. The next page I just thought I'd show you is how I collect the data. It's a lot of hands-on stuff. I really should find a more efficient way to do this. This is just another preliminary. So then I take all the data and I just merge it. These were all the other institutions that initially expressed interest in participating. They, for whatever reason, weren't able to get the data, but I did send them what they needed. And this is the part of the data. There's 2 more institutions that I did end up getting, Dickinson and Northern Kentucky, which you'll see. So lots of data here. I just fill in the numbers from those individual documents, just keep collecting. I collect the N. You know, it's important to know how many students we're talking about. Again, each year, invited, joined, didn't join, retained, didn't join, retained, joined, on and on and on, as much as we could get. And then the final, go ahead, final. So this is the data. This is sort of after everything was said and done. This is the data that I had been using. So N was over 15,000 students, which is pretty good. And this is for each chapter, each year, but these are the differences. So it was, before I added one last chapter, it was 10, so sort of 10%, so sort of rounding it up, because 10% so it's a nice round number, but technically it is 9%, and what that means is that of high achieving first year students by joining Alpha, well, we'll talk about cause and effect in a minute, but we can say that Alpha Lambda Delta members are retained at a 9% higher rate than those who were invited to join and didn't. So as you can see, there's not that many institutions as part of this project, and so my goal was to add, even though I feel like the total number of students in the project is a pretty healthy number, we were looking to add to it and sort of revive this project. Some institutions, and you might want to check yours, and I'm going to give you an example, like Northern Arizona, who I don't think is on the call, and Dickinson is one, and Northern Kentucky is one as well. They collect this data already, and so there might be somebody, so she just sort of, Emily from Northern Arizona just sent this because they track it anyway. And so there might be somebody in your registrar's office or student records office that's already tracking. They're probably not tracking Alpha Lambda Delta membership, but Northern Arizona was. So you can sort of create a system where you're collecting it. And you can see that accepted, yes, no. You can see right away that that accepted are at a high, retained at a higher rate for that one institution. I talked about the timeline. Okay, so I'm going to go back to not sharing my screen unless someone wants to see anything. So let me stop there. Any questions about that? Any thoughts about that? Does that seem like it's something your institution would support you in collecting, or you have your own access to? What are some thoughts? Any thoughts?
I think as long as I have student ID numbers, I'm good. I can work pretty easily with our report person.
Yeah, so glad you mentioned that. So it's on my notes somewhere and I forgot to mention it. Where's my notes? This is, there were two things I wanted to make sure and point out. One was that this is only relevant to those who invite in the spring, because we're looking at retention. By the way, if you do invite in the fall or you do both semesters, graduation rates is certainly something you can study or research or track. That is relevant for any student who joins at any point in their first year. But student ID was the other one that I wanted to mention, and that, as I recall from 2 years ago, that was one of the sticking points that was a challenge, the biggest challenge for getting this information efficiently. So if you already get your lists with a column of their student ID, or if you could ask that when you get your lists, that really helps. The student can also, when they join anyway, they're asked to indicate that in the acceptance process in MHS. It's an optional question that gets asked. You could tell students to make sure and fill that out, or oftentimes you already have it. But when you want to run a long report from the registrar to see who enrolled in such and such a semester, student IDs are key. They're not, that's how they organize their information. Banner IDs, student IDs, whatever it is. So if you can get that information or start asking for it and start keeping it, it's going to help in the long run.
Lee, did you see the comment from Jenny?
Here's Miser. We actually discussed trying to start doing this for our campus. Excellent. Yeah, that's great, Jenny. Yeah, I mean, this is great information for Alpha Lambda Delta to have, no question, and it's turned out to be what I was hoping for in terms of a higher. If it was lower or the same, we wouldn't be having this conversation, but I had a feeling that there would be a higher retention rate. So great for us, but really great for your campus as well, and for your chapter, and for your institution, and for you as an advisor. It just could just be more reinforcing information for you to have in terms of the work you do with the chapter, and your role can help enhance that. And one thing that I mentioned in my email 2 years ago, we never did anything about this, but it's certainly, for anyone ambitious out there, it is certainly a possibility, is this could be a written piece of work. This could be a published research project or something that will end up in a publication. If anybody is interested in that and wants to pursue that, there are a number of journals in student affairs, NASPA journal and ACPA, and it could be in, I know that the first year experience has a journal, so it could be, you know, a published piece of work if anybody was motivated by that or wanted to pursue that. I think there's a lot of data here and data that we could gather that could make a nice article. So that would be great if Sam Houston could start this. And again, you know, I don't want it to seem too overwhelming. I try and do a lot of the legwork for you and just, you know, hand you the list that you need. It might not have student ID on it. If that's a, you know, if, again, we can start to collect that, but I don't want you to have to do too much work if you can just hand over an Excel list to your registrar, and it shouldn't, I say this as if I'm a registrar and I'm not, so I'm thinking, is it that hard? They've got some systems, they just run it through a system. It's all math. They just need to know who was enrolled in the fall of 2019 of these students who was enrolled. That's it. Easy peasy. No, but I know it's not always easy. But I try and do as much of the work as possible so that you're not burdened with that. Oh, Lynn, I think you're muted or not. I don't see you muted, but we're not hearing you. I see you talking, but.
How about now?
That's good. Yay.
So at UK, we use the SAP and IRIS system.
Okay.
And when I took over back in the fall with Pat, we have a way to code our students in SAP. And so we created an identifier. So all of our new members will be coded ALD. We
Okay.
can run reports just on that. So
Great.
that's how we plan to do that. And we hope maybe
Okay.
now that we're back and organized and new advisors, we can increase those numbers for you.
That would be great for you. And so am I hearing then that you can also track those who were invited and didn't join?
Yeah, that's because we have the student numbers already. I got my list yesterday.
Okay.
To already pull for the fall, and
Okay,
it's
good.
increased from last year up to 600 students. So we're
Wow.
very excited.
Great for the invitee list. Excellent.
Yeah, so we'll be sending that out soon after we get
Okay.
a date and
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. So I don't know if other universities have that. I mean, UK is pretty large. If they can code them, I do that with all of my other programs that I help with, and so I can pull reports just on that code that's in SAP.
That's a great idea. Yeah. Yeah. So if others can do that.
Yeah.
So I think what next steps will be is that I'm going to craft a similar email then that I sent out 2 years ago with the same ask of who would like to participate. Can you in fact gather the data that's needed? I mean, that's really the crux of it. You might want to and you can't get the data, so that would be something for those on this webinar to pursue and see if it's something that your university will share. Again, you know, yesterday, the other day, we led a webinar in FERPA. This is not identifying any students whatsoever. This is very FERPA compliant because we're not asking for names, we're not collecting any of that. All we want to know is either the raw number that 32 students out of 100 returned and retained, you know what I mean, whatever that is, or you do the math and send me the percentages. Either way, so we're not asking for any identifying information or grade information or directory information. Or we're not asking for directory or educational records for those who know FERPA. So it should be fine for the university to help you with this project if they're willing. So I'll put the call out and put some deadlines here and a timeline to see how we can start to collect this data. It's certainly something to think going forward. If you can't go back into the past for your last spring's class, then think about it going forward. And we'll collect as we go. And again, I'm going to have a timeline for this so that we can sort of put a beginning and end to it and see what we get. But reply and reach out with specific questions if you have, unique to your institution, which there'll be plenty of those situations. And we'd be thrilled to have you to be a part of it and have you participate and collect the data. So thank you for your interest in it and willingness and being here. And with no other questions, I think we're good. Thanks, everybody. Bye.